This video is all about how to make great money playing guitar at weddings, specifically at ceremonies. Instrumental guitar at ceremonies. It's an easy gig and it pays really well. And I'll tell you all about how that works. First of all you really need is your guitar and maybe a small speaker to make it a little bit louder. You're not going to be loud, but because you're playing for a congregation, which is the audience essentially, it might be 100 or 200 people. You know, you got to be loud enough to be heard, but you don't want to be loud. You just need to be heard. So probably just a guitar playing into some kind of a small PA speaker. That PA speaker probably should have at least 2 inputs, maybe even 3, and I'll tell you why. Because in addition to your guitar, you might also want to have an input for an iPod. You might get special requests from the bride and groom, or there might be a particular arrangement that they want to have played. So whatever little speaker you have, it should have not only a channel for your guitar, and not only a channel for your iPod, but a 3rd channel, probably for a wireless lapel mic. You're going to want to be able to offer that to the officiant. The officiant, you know, the pastor or priest or clergy person or whoever it is that's actually saying, I'll pronounce you, husband and wife. That person needs to be heard. And so it's very helpful if they can wear a little microphone and it can come out of your speaker, not to make it loud, just to bring it up just a little bit so they can be heard by the congregation. It's not always necessary. Some of them have really loud booming voices. Also, sometimes this whole event is kind of smaller or it's in a smaller room anyway, so it's not a problem. But if you are, for example, outside, then you might need it to get a little bit louder just so that everybody can hear. That's a nice option to be able to offer to the bride and groom when when they're shopping around trying to hire someone. So what kind of music should you be playing on guitar for an event like this? Well, it's going to be instrumental. It probably should be sort of a clean sound if you're, whether you're playing electric or acoustic, maybe a finger picking style. We're not talking about folk style strumming. We're probably talking about something that's more melodic. If you can play some recognizable tunes where you can play melodies and also a little rhythm line in a sort of finger picking style, that's probably the ideal. It doesn't have to be really complex classical stuff, because some of that stuff can be really intricate and it's a little bit overkill. It's too complicated. Really what you want is just recognizable popular songs that would be appropriate to play at a wedding. And you can go online and there's all kinds of ideas for songs to play at a wedding. That'll give you an idea. Really what you should do though is sit down with your guitar, make a list of the songs that you think would be a good idea to play. Just sit down with your guitar and work out your own arrangements of those. It doesn't have to be difficult. In fact, probably simpler is better because the audience just wants to hear the melody. It's really just background music for the ceremony. You're not the star of the show. Really, it's the bride's day and the bride is the star of the show. You're there to help make that day as nice as it can be. So how many songs do you need? Well, really, you're probably only playing for about an hour. Most weddings are on a Saturday afternoon at like 5:30 p.m. That's a very common time for, that's what time the ceremony begins, at 5:30, for example. So you're probably going to start playing about, 45 minutes before that. As the congregation, as the people are starting to show up, you should be playing some music, some nice background music to sort of set the mood, right? And then, usually the bride will have her own song, whether it's Here Comes the Bride, or some other song that she requests, whether that's something that you actually play or you have a recording on your iPod. But really, once the ceremony begins, you're almost done. Now, sometimes there will be a part of the ceremony where the bride and groom are doing some special little event, like, they're lighting candles together or something like that. And maybe you play a little tune during that. But really, there's not much more to do, because then after it's, I now pronounce you, and then the bride and groom go down the aisle, then you'll be playing, the wedding march, da 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 da, or whatever song you work out with the bride and groom in advance. And then after that, you might play 1 or 2 other tunes as people are leaving, but that's it. So the whole gig only lasts, maybe 2 hours. Your setup is very easy. You have very little equipment. So, now you might want to get there early enough to set up your equipment and then kind of get out of the way and hang out and wait. So maybe now your gig is 3 hours long. So it's really easy, pretty short gig to do. And what's really great about doing a gig like that is how much you get paid, or can get paid. In the Southeast here in Florida, something like that is going to go for $500 to $800 for a gig like that. Whatever instrument you're playing, whether it's sort of an acoustic instrumental guitar, or if you're a violinist or other kind of a soloist, if you're good, if you're in demand, if you have a good presentation, then you can make anywhere from $500 to $800, and it's just a one-person gig, and it's so easy. Those are some great gigs to have, and the more of those you can get, the better off you'll be as a working musician. So how often can you expect to get booked doing gigs like this? Well, most weddings happen on Saturdays. Like I mentioned before, the majority of weddings are on a Saturday at 5:30 in the afternoon. That is extremely common. It is not impossible for a wedding to be like at noon on a Saturday, or perhaps on a Sunday. I've even done weddings on a Friday before. Usually the reason why a bride and groom maybe didn't book it on a Saturday is because maybe the venue they wanted wasn't available on Saturday, so they did it on the previous, on the day before on Friday, or the day after on Sunday. That's usually why that happens. So that means you're limited to Saturdays, and there's only just so many Saturdays in a year. Well, in addition to most weddings happening on a Saturday, they also happen during certain seasons. Springtime is wedding season. We're talking about April and May. Those are the big months for weddings. It does happen all year round. The exceptions would be very few people get married at Christmas time, right in the middle of the holidays. You're not usually going to book a wedding in the middle of that. And also, weddings don't typically happen in the middle of the really hot months of summer. So late July and August, there's not too many weddings happening during that time. It's usually the first half of the year, the first 6 months of the year, or first 5 months for sure. January to May, that's probably when most weddings happen. And then there's a few more that will happen in the fall, when things start to cool off a little bit, but before Christmas. So we're talking about maybe September, October, November. There'll be some more weddings there. So really, you've got about 8 or 9 months throughout the year when most of the weddings happen. So that means you've only got Saturdays during those 8 or 9 months. So that's anywhere from 30, maybe 40 Saturdays out of a year that you would have to be able to get yourself booked up. So how do you get booked up with that many gigs? Well, I have another video that talks all about how to really fill up your calendar and get as many of those good paying gigs as possible. But right now, let's just stick with this particular type of gig. The easiest way really is to get listed on wedding vendor websites. There's tons of them out there, and the easiest way to find those is just to go on Google or your favorite search engine and then type in, wedding guitarist, and then see what happens, see what you get on that web page. You might find a few actual guitarists listed there, but mostly what you're going to get is vendor websites. These are companies these are wedding companies like The Knot and some other. These are websites that have that are selling stuff to the brides and all the stuff that they need for their wedding. Those are the ones that are going to show up really high on the search engine. So just find all those websites, go to those websites, and get yourself listed there in the vendor section. There's always a vendor section on those websites. Get yourself listed there, put your information out. You need a good photo, and if you can have a link to your own web page, that's good too, and obviously your contact information needs to be on there. So those are my tips for how to make great money playing guitar at wedding ceremonies. And if you've got any comments or questions or other ideas, put those below in the comments section. And of course, hit the like button and the subscribe and the little bell and all the things you always do with YouTube videos. And we'll see you next time.